After my stepdaughter graduated from high school, she came to me asking for a reward. I gladly agreed until I heard what she wanted. She asked me to get an abortion. "You're just a stepmom," she said, venom dripping from her voice. "You didn't even get my permission to have a baby. What, are you planning to use that thing in your belly to fight me for the inheritance?" I was absolutely furious, but she wasn't done. She started pouring oil all over the bathroom tiles and scattering dried beans across the stairs. Then I discovered she had joined an online group called Kid Free and Thriving. The messages I found in that chat were beyond shocking. This girl, who always acted so polite and sweet around adults, was calling me a gold digger in the group. She claimed I only married her dad for money. Worse yet, she boasted that if I lost the baby and could never have another, she'd have complete control over me. That was the moment I started collecting evidence. When the police got involved, she finally panicked. "Michelle, I've made up my mind about my graduation reward." Sophie tugged at her shirt, her face glowing with that familiar, confident smile as she looked right at me. I smiled back, warmth spreading through my chest. After all, I had spent years helping raise her. She was confident, bright, and polite. People always said she was born to shine. "I want you to get an abortion." I froze, not sure I heard her correctly. I said, "My reward is for you to terminate the pregnancy." Sophie stood in front of me, the sweet smile on her face twisting into something cruel and mocking. My vision blurred for a second as her words sank in. I stood stunned, finally managing to whisper, "What did you just say?" She rolled her eyes, her expression flattening into cold contempt. The mask she wore so well had vanished. "Are you deaf? You promised to grant my wish once I got into college. And didn't you just say you're pregnant? Well, my wish is for you to get rid of that baby." She said it so casually, like she was asking me to throw out a piece of trash, not end a life. My smile vanished. I looked at her with a seriousness I rarely used. "Sophie, I understand you might not want a sibling, but this baby is already on the way. I won't be terminating the pregnancy. She's my child. And you're my child too. I promise I'll love you both." But before I could finish, her voice sliced through mine like a whip. "I don't need your love. You're just a glorified maid brought in to help out around the house. Don't kid yourself into thinking you're my mom. I'm telling you now, that baby is not staying. I don't care what you want. You think you, a stepmother, have the right to carry a second child without my permission? You really think you're worthy of giving my dad another kid?" Her words hit like a bucket of ice water. My body stiffened and I had to grab onto a chair to keep from collapsing. "Sophie, how can you say something like that?" He sneered. "Oh, drop the motherly act. You're not fooling anyone. You got pregnant just to compete with me for the family's money, didn't you? You even sent me to a school across the state just so you could be alone with my dad. You're calculating as hell. Well, guess what? My father's inheritance is mine. It's not for you. And it's definitely not for that thing in your stomach." Her accusations were so outrageous I couldn't even speak for a moment. Then slowly I forced myself to breathe, digging my nails into the palm of my hand to stay calm. My voice came out low and steely. "You think I'm having a baby to steal your inheritance? Do you even realize your dad doesn't make half as much money as I do? You're living the way you are because I've poured everything I had into you, not just him. How do you think you got those elite $16,000 semester piano lessons when your dad only pulls in $8,000 a month?" Her triumphant smirk faltered, but she quickly covered it with a scoff. "You're just some woman. Who knows what you did to earn that money? And now that you're married to my dad, your money is his money, which makes it mine. Funny how now you want to keep everything separate." I inhaled sharply, my eyes stinging. I remembered the year I married into this family. Sophie was only 13, skinny as a rail and quiet as a whisper. Her biological mom had left, cheated and disappeared, not even bothering to call. John divorced her shortly after. It was me who stepped in. I paid for her treatments, found her a therapist, helped her build herself back up from the ruins. I turned that shy, anxious little girl into the self-assured, charming young woman standing in front of me. And now that same girl was tearing me down, using my unborn child as a weapon. My gaze turned cold. She flinched, actually stepping back, but still tried to hold her ground. "So what's it gonna be?" she demanded. "You getting the abortion or not? Because if you don't, I swear I'll never forgive you." A bitter smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I picked up my bag from the table and walked toward the door. "Not a chance," I said quietly. That's not something I will ever agree to. I suggest you take some time to cool off. And for the record, Sophie, I'm your stepmother. Legally, I owe you nothing. Your lifestyle, your comfort, comes entirely from me. It's time you asked yourself what kind of attitude you should have toward someone like that. It was the first time I had ever spoken to her like this, cold, detached, firm. Her face went ghostly pale. She stared at me in silence, stunned, speechless. I turned and left the house. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the bed and broke down crying. 5 years of loving her like my own. 5 years of giving everything I had. And now I realized that no matter how much love I poured in, it couldn't buy the truth. It couldn't buy loyalty. It couldn't stop betrayal. I took a deep breath and let the sadness wash over me. The phone rang suddenly. I glanced at the caller ID, took a breath, and forced myself to sound calm before answering. Hey, sweetheart. John's voice came through low with an odd edge to it, something I couldn't quite place. Emily, when are you coming home? The kid and I are waiting for you to eat. His tone made me frown. Something felt off. Was it just my imagination or? When I first married him, I was still young and drawn to his quiet steadiness. He wasn't flashy, but he was reliable, grounded. That stability made me feel safe. And to his credit, John had always treated me well. For years we rarely argued. But today what had changed? Had Sophie told him something? Was he starting to think this whole mess was my fault? I pressed my lips together, murmured a soft reply, then went to wash my face and put on a light touch of makeup before heading home. Before stepping inside, I double-checked my reflection to make sure it didn't look like I'd been crying. Only then did I open the door. Sophie rushed toward me the second I stepped in, throwing her arms around me. But I caught a strange scent on her, something off, faint but familiar. Alcohol. Just a whiff, but enough for someone like me with a sensitive nose to notice. I gently pulled away from her embrace, ignoring the uneasy feeling rising in my stomach. She clung to me like usual, her voice soft and broken, the perfect picture of a wounded child. Michelle, I'm so sorry, she whimpered. I had a fight with my boyfriend today. I wasn't in a good place and I said things I shouldn't have. Will you forgive me? Tears welled in her eyes as she grabbed my hand, the words tumbling out like a confession. I'm just scared. I'm scared that once you have your own baby, you won't love me anymore. Dad's always working. He's never around. My boyfriend cheated on me. You're the only one I have, Michelle. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just panicked. I thought if you had the baby I'd be nothing to you anymore. I'm really sorry. Then she dropped to her knees as if about to beg. She looked so pitiful that a part of me softened. But the things she'd said earlier, they still lingered like poison in my mind. I gave her a gentle smile, helped her up, and spoke in a calm, soothing voice. It's okay. I understand you're feeling unloved. But listen to me. Even if I have a baby of my own, I won't stop loving you. Sophie immediately burst into tears, burying her face in my chest, sobbing harder than before. John walked over a moment later, smiling as he led us to the dinner table. Clearly he wanted to smooth things over. He'd even cooked dinner himself. Emily, don't be too hard on Sophie. Her mom really messed her up. She's got some emotional scars, that's all. Seeing you two getting along again makes me feel better. You scared me today, you know. When Sophie told me you two had a fight, I rushed home. Skipped a meeting and everything. I bit the end of my chopsticks, my eyes narrowing just slightly. Wait. Sophie told him we had a fight. And that's why he left work? What exactly did that have to do with me? He noticed my silence and his expression shifted, just for a second, like he was annoyed I didn't respond. But he held it back. Dinner passed in uneasy quiet. We lived in a spacious 2-story duplex. I had bought the place outright, planning to retire here one day. After marrying John, I decided to let him move in. We worked for the same company. It made sense. My original master bedroom was downstairs, but tonight, claiming I didn't feel well, I told John I'd be sleeping upstairs in the guest room, Sophie's floor. After a long shower, I was about to get dressed when I suddenly felt my foot slip out from under me. My hand shot out instinctively to catch something, but the coat rack that had always stood by the door was gone. I barely avoided falling, catching myself just in time. That's when I noticed it, the slick sheen on the floor. A strange mixture of oil and water. Under the hallway light, the puddle shimmered with a rainbow film. Luminous. My stomach turned. A chill crept up my spine. Maybe, just maybe, it was a coincidence. Maybe. But the next few days would crush that final sliver of hope. After that terrifying suspicion began to take root in my mind, I became hyper-aware of everything around me. That night after my shower, just as I was getting dressed, I caught a strange smell. I looked down and realized it was coming from my underwear. Frowning, I tossed it straight into the trash. At first, I assumed maybe I hadn't rinsed it well. But the scent was too familiar, something I'd smelled before, on someone. As I got dressed and headed toward the stairs, I suddenly overheard hushed voices from the room next door. "Dad, just don't sleep with that woman for the next few days. I put something on her clothes." My eyes widened. In that instant, I knew exactly what that smell was. It was the same chemical scent I'd picked up from Sophie. My stomach turned. I made a few quiet inquiries and had someone check on where she'd been recently. What I found made my blood run cold. On the very day she demanded I get an abortion, she had visited some departments at the hospital. Everything clicked. Sophie had deliberately tampered with my underwear, coating it with something that could induce discomfort or worse, a miscarriage. I felt physically sick, but it also sharpened my senses. From that day on, I checked everything: the clothes I wore, the water I drank, the food I touched. I trusted nothing. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie's face. The first time she called me Mom, the hand-drawn cards she gave me, the cup of warm water she brought when I was sick. Had I broken her somehow? Had I forced her into a corner she couldn't escape from? Maybe she hadn't changed. Maybe I was just foolish enough to think love alone could fix everything. My mind spun in endless loops. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on it. At 3 a.m., I unlocked my phone and typed "family crisis counseling" into the search bar. Dozens of listings slid down my screen. I picked one with good reviews, a modest little counseling center not far from my office. The next afternoon, I took a half-day off and quietly walked into the pale gray building marked Family Counseling. Wood floors, soft air conditioning, a struggling ivy plant trying its best to stay green in the corner. The therapist was a black woman in her 50s, hair in tight coils, her voice warm and delicate, like a hand-knitted scarf. "You can call me May," she said gently. "You don't have to make perfect sense. Just talk about what you feel." My throat tightened. I thought I was doing everything right. My voice came out hoarse. "She's not my biological daughter. But I treated her like family. I thought if I just loved her hard enough, she'd eventually love me back." May nodded slowly. "What happened that made you start to doubt yourself?" She told me I didn't deserve to have a child. That I only got pregnant to steal her inheritance. May didn't respond right away. She leaned back in her chair. "Do you think she meant that? Was she trying to hurt you or trying to control you?" I sat in silence for a long time. "Maybe both," I whispered. "And you?" May asked softly. "Do you believe you did something wrong?" I looked down at my fingers twisting in my lap like a nervous schoolgirl. "I don't know. All I know is that I feel alone. She doesn't love me and he doesn't defend me either. I feel like a maid they're getting ready to kick out, and every time I try to speak up, I feel like I'm just making excuses." May stood and brought back 2 glasses of warm water. "Sometimes," she said, "we spend so long trying to be what everyone else needs, we forget that we deserve care too. You're taking care of everyone else, but who's taking care of you?" A lump formed in my throat and I almost cried. I used to be such a strong woman. I could handle work, manage a household, raise a child, trust a man. But now I felt like a lost bird crashing into glass, trying to convince myself the wind was just too harsh. "Emily," she said gently, "have you ever considered that your job now isn't to please them anymore, but to start protecting yourself?" Her words pierced straight through me. I nodded slowly. "I think I finally know what I need to do." When I stepped out of the counseling center, the sunlight was so bright I had to squint. But for once it didn't feel cruel. It felt warm. The next day at noon, I took a slight detour to Sophie's school. I told myself it was just coincidence, that I happened to be passing by, that I just wanted to return the shoes she'd left in my car. But the truth was, I needed to know if anyone else saw what I saw. School was letting out. Teenagers spilled across the campus in loud, laughing clusters. Girls in uniforms held art portfolios, tennis rackets, lunch boxes. They giggled and jogged toward the subway. I stood outside the gate and watched as Sophie emerged from the building, composed, polite, smiling. She exchanged pleasantries with 2 teachers and offered to carry a pile of textbooks. A picture-perfect student. "Are you Sophie's mother?" A woman beside me spoke. "Stepmother," I corrected, forcing a smile. She nodded, a flicker of something, pity? Uncertainty, passing through her eyes. "I'm her AP Lit teacher. Miss Green." We made polite small talk and I was just about to leave when she lowered her voice. "Are you doing okay?" I blinked. "Me? Yes." She hesitated. "It's just, twice now when you've picked her up you looked so tired." And honestly, I wasn't going to say anything, but Sophie wrote a personal essay last month. My heart skipped a beat. She described a woman in her life, controlling, manipulative, always claiming it was out of love. Forced her to study music. Sent her to a school far from her friends. Even dictated what she could eat. We assumed she meant her birth mother. Then carefully she added, "But some of the details made a few of us wonder if she was talking about you." I felt something lodge in my throat. I couldn't speak. "I'm not here to judge," Miss Green said gently. "Just to say, sometimes the cracks between how someone presents themselves and who they really are, they start to show. We've seen so many perfect daughters. Great grades, charming smiles, always respectful with teachers. But at home they're someone else entirely." I nodded, lips barely curling into a bitter smile. She patted my arm. "Sophie is very smart. Brilliant even. And the smart ones, they know how to hide. No matter what she's done to you, you don't have to blame yourself. You just happen to love someone who doesn't want to be loved." Her words floated through the air like a breeze. I stood there watching Sophie's perfectly put-together figure vanish into traffic. So polite. So poised. But I knew now, I wasn't the only one who'd seen through her. And in that moment something inside me stood up and took its place. I knew it finally. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. And I wasn't wrong about her. She wasn't a lost child. She was a girl full of bitterness and intent to burn it all down. Sure enough, just a few days later I felt something odd underfoot as I walked down the stairs. So slippery that I almost fell hard to the ground. I froze and shifted my weight carefully, stepping aside. That's when I saw them. Several soybeans, slick with oil, scattered deliberately across the steps. If I hadn't been so cautious lately, I might have fallen headfirst. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh and picked them up one by one, placing them neatly aside like nothing had happened. Then I went downstairs as if it were just another normal day. Sophie's eyes followed me. She was clearly disappointed, her gaze lingering on my belly with a chilling stillness that made my skin crawl. I gave her a cheerful smile, pretending not to notice a thing. "Dinner time," I said warmly. With the tension still lingering between us, John had taken over most meals that week. When he brought out the noodles he'd made, I immediately caught a faint off-putting scent. I pushed the bowl away with a slight frown and, while their backs were turned, spooned some onto a napkin. Then I smiled and reached for the takeout I had ordered earlier. "Everything's been so bland lately," I said, handing Sophie a drumstick. "So I got some fried chicken, your favorite. Amber glaze, just how you like it." I winked. "No need to thank me." Her face twisted through a range of emotions before she forced out a strained, "Thanks, Michelle. Mom." After dinner, I claimed a sudden work emergency and rushed out of the house. The napkin with the noodles and the soybeans in a Ziploc bag. I delivered them to a friend of mine who studied pharmacology. I asked her to tell me exactly what was in it. The reply came quickly. Just one line. Mifepristone, abortion drug. I closed my eyes and laughed, quiet, bitter, shaking laughter. Then I composed myself, saved the test report and screenshots from our home security system. I went straight back home. When I stepped inside, I saw them lounging on the couch, laughing at some sitcom as if everything was perfectly normal. Sophie looked up and, pretending to be sweet, walked toward me. I didn't let her get close. Instead, I slapped her. Hard. She screamed, startled and furious, reaching out to shove me back. But I dodged and hit her again on the other cheek. Her body reeled and slammed into the wall, her expression warped with shock and pain. John jumped up, trying to intervene, but I hurled my bag and the file folder straight at his chest. "Take a look at what your darling daughter's been up to," I said coldly. "All that effort to force me into a miscarriage. Impressive, huh? He caught the papers, skimmed through the report, and his face didn't change at all. Not shock. Not guilt. Just a blank stare. That was the moment I knew he had known all along. He'd known exactly what she was doing. And he let it happen. His first words weren't apology or anger. They were, "Sophie's just a kid. She didn't understand how serious it was. Don't overreact." Then something even more disgusting. "She's a teenager, Michelle. She wouldn't actually do anything dangerous. She was just acting out." I let out a dry laugh, my hands trembling. "You really hear yourself right now? You think any of this is normal?" His face darkened. I slapped him across the other cheek. "You live under my roof. You eat my food. You sleep in the bed I paid for. And you have the nerve to stand here and defend attempted murder." His fists clenched. I could see him trying to swallow his anger. "I know this crossed the line, okay? You have every right to be upset. Hit me, scream at me, I'll take it. But it's over now, right? Let's not drag this out. She's just scared. Give it time, she'll see that having a sibling isn't such a threat." I stared at him, then turned to look at Sophie, who had collapsed against the wall, her face twisted in hatred. And I smiled. Pulled. Razor sharp. "Time." I echoed. "I'm out of time. And out of patience." I walked over, flung open the front door and pointed out. "You've got 1 hour. Pack your things and get out. We're filing for divorce tomorrow." John's face went pale. "You're ending our marriage over this?" Sophie looked panicked. She hadn't expected her scheme to blow up like this. She tried to approach, but I kicked her away hard. Then I threw their packed bags outside and called the front desk. "This is Michelle Walker, the owner of Unit 203. I need help removing 2 non-registered residents." The building staff was prompt. Within an hour they were gone. All their things removed. The apartment spotless again. I hired a cleaner to deep clean every corner of the place. Even the air felt lighter. I boxed up anything they left behind and left it with the concierge. Then I sent a group text. "Your things are at the front desk. If you don't come for them, I'll assume you've forfeited them." Only after that did I finally sit on the couch, exhaling for what felt like the first time in weeks. But just then I felt something beneath me, something hard. I stood up. It was a phone. One of the backup phones I had given Sophie months ago to help with schoolwork. She must have forgotten it in the couch cushions. I picked it up, intending to drop it off with security. Then the screen lit up. A message popped up from a group chat. "So, did it work, Sophie? Did she lose the baby?" My blood ran cold. Hands shaking, I opened the app. A group called Bye Bye Baby Club. Dozens of users with creepy avatars. Anime eyes, horror movie stills, faceless silhouettes. The group admin was someone called Blood Prince 94, dominating the chat logs. I scrolled up. Sophie had joined this group the year I married her father. She called me names: gold-digging witch, leech, money-hungry stray dog circling her dad. And the others? They cheered her on. Called me things I couldn't bring myself to read out loud. Then came the pregnancy announcement. What followed were suggestions that made my skin crawl. Trip her. Feed her something risky. If that fails, scare her until she runs to a doctor. She listened to them. But that wasn't the worst of it. One account, seemingly under 13, complained about his mom forcing piano lessons. Ahmad told him, "Try filming her in the shower and post it." Another kid said his dad banned junk food for track training. A reply came, "Cut his brake line." 3 days later the kid posted a selfie. His dad had crashed and broken his leg. The group cheered. Including Sophie. I could barely hold the phone. My vision blurred. My whole body went cold. She had been planning this for years. And I had let her stay in my home. I'd fed her. Cared for her. Loved her. A loud bang shook the front door. Sophie's voice rang out in a vicious scream. "Michelle. You bitch. How dare you throw me out? Open the damn door." I quickly snapped photos of the group chat and slipped the phone back where I found it. Then I exhaled, stood up and opened the door. She looked straight past me at the couch. Stormed inside. Grabbed the phone. Shoved it into her pocket like nothing had happened. "Your things are at the concierge," I said flatly. She turned, teeth clenched, eyes blazing. "You think this is over? You'll regret this, Michelle. I promise you." Then she slammed the door behind her. I stood still, watching her vanish into the night. And slowly I smiled. Triumphant. Done. The living room was quiet. Just me and the ticking of the clock. I opened my phone, intending to skim through emails to distract myself, but something unexpected caught my eye. A read receipt had popped up from John's work email. But the message hadn't been CC'd to me. It had gone to someone I didn't recognize, Yolanda Reyes. I clicked in. It was a confirmation for a business lunch, but the final line made me sit up straight. Looking forward to catching up in Chicago next week. Can't wait to talk about the old days. Chicago? John never mentioned a trip to Chicago. And talk about the old days? Who puts that in a professional email? I copied Yolanda's name and pasted it into a social media search bar. A few seconds later, a profile loaded. A woman in her 40s with a cheerful profile photo, standing beside a young child. I scrolled through her public posts until I landed on an old photograph. It was taken at the beach 2 decades ago. A young John stood in the center, arm brushing against a woman who looked an awful lot like Yolanda. They were standing far too close to be just friends. In the comments, one stood out. Wow, you two were adorable back then. So happy you're reconnecting. My throat went dry. Humiliation and disgust churned in my gut, thick and sour. He never told me about this woman. Never said a word. Not while I was pouring myself into raising his daughter, fighting off betrayal in my own home, while he was mentally thousands of miles away, rekindling something with a woman from his past. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared expense account. I'd never bothered to check his minor transactions before. But now. There it was. 2 months ago, during a week I'd been swamped with end-of-quarter reports, he'd booked a room at Skyline Hotel in Chicago. 2 nights. Double suite. I clicked into the itinerary. It matched the exact dates he told me he was away for on-site research. And when he returned from that trip, he kissed my forehead and said, "You're amazing. I don't know how I'd manage this home without you." My stomach turned. This man hadn't just failed to stand by me. He had been sneaking off to cozy weekends with an old flame while I held everything together back home. He and Sophie had treated me like the outsider, the threat to their little fantasy of family, while they were the ones drawing knives behind my back. I finally saw it clearly. He never wanted a partner. I was just the woman who let him live in my house. His domestic contractor. The one who paid the bills and managed his chaos. His smiles over dinner, his reassurances, they were nothing but a mask. I snapped a screenshot of Yolanda's profile and filed it into the folder I had quietly started naming evidence. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the end of my humiliation. And for the first time I laughed, not bitterly, not in pain. Just with clarity. They thought they could push me out. Replace me. Steal what I built. But they were wrong. The rules of this game had changed. And now I was the one holding the dice. I picked up my phone and created a burner account, complete with the solid black avatar all the edgy teens in Sophie's group chat seemed to favor. Then I sent a message to join. I hate my dad so much. Anyone know how I can really screw him over? Seconds later I was in. And almost immediately a familiar name lit up the chat. Sophie. My bitch stepmom's divorcing my dad. Any way I can make sure she loses the baby and gives me the house. Someone called Icehacker replied. Got an idea. Wanna hear it? A chill slid down my spine. Sophie typed back within seconds. OMG, you're a genius. Tell me how to ruin her. I want her to be done. For good. My jaw tightened as I kept reading. A few days later she called me. Said she wanted to meet. Said she was sorry. Her voice trembled with fake emotion. I realize now I was so wrong, she sobbed. I acted out, but I miss you, I miss our home. Can we please talk in person? I gave a soft laugh she couldn't hear. And I said yes. We agreed to meet at the coffee shop downstairs. Noon. But I was there by 11, hidden in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses shielding my face. Sophie arrived early, of course. She ordered 2 lattes and specifically requested takeout cups. I watched from the shadows as she pulled a tiny bottle from her coat pocket and dumped something into one of the straws. Methodical. Smiling. When she finally settled into the seat, I rose and walked toward her, calm and steady. She blinked in surprise but quickly masked it with a sunny smile. Michelle, she said softly, I've missed you so much. I've never gone this long without you. I sat across from her, keeping my smile steady, matching her performance. You and your father have taught me more about betrayal than I ever cared to learn. Her lips twitched. He sniffled. Please don't divorce him, she whispered. He's terrible at being alone. You think it's my mom's fault I was a wreck growing up? It wasn't. It was him. She reached out, clasping my hand. You were the only one who really cared. I was scared of losing you. But her eyes kept flicking to the cup she'd doctored. I saw the anticipation in her face. The barely concealed hunger. I smiled inwardly. And took a sip from the tainted coffee. Her eyes lit up for just a moment. She leaned in. You know what you just drank? She whispered. That was a triple dose. Cost me a fortune. Doctor said one was enough to guarantee you'll never carry to term again. Her voice dipped further and she even patted my cheek. Be smart. Drop the divorce. Serve your role. Who knows? Maybe I'll let you stay. After all, you're not young anymore. I've still got a future. Before she could say another word, a deep, icy voice spoke from behind me. I looked up. And there stood John. John burst into the cafe like a man racing to save someone's life. Dramatic, breathless, his face a contorted mask of panic. But I could see it instantly. Behind all that performative concern were the real emotions. Smugness and scorn. He stormed toward me and yanked me up from my seat with unnecessary force, hissing under his breath. If you had any sense, this whole thing could have blown over quietly. I didn't want it to get this far, but you just had to push me, didn't you? You'd throw away a marriage over this? Over nothing? I've busted my ass for you all these years, and now you think you can just walk away? You think someone your age still has options? You've already missed your window. Sophie's the only child you're ever going to have. And let's be real, what kind of man would want someone like you now? I blinked, widened my eyes as if stunned, and asked, sweet as sugar. So, you're admitting you and Sophie tampered with my drink? He sneered, not even bothering to deny it. Of course we did. Either you drop this divorce and behave, or you pay $500,000 for your freedom. Otherwise, you'll regret it. I smiled inwardly. Finally, I pulled away from him, stood up tall, and casually raised my phone. The screen lit up, red dot blinking. Recording in progress. Thanks for making it so easy, I said clearly. You really couldn't resist, could you? Not even a little subtlety. You just handed me everything I needed. The cafe had gone completely silent. Patrons were frozen, staring. I turned to face them all, my voice loud and crystal clear. This man and his daughter tried to drug me. They laced my drink with medication to stop me from ever having children. They wanted to ensure I couldn't get pregnant, so they could steal my assets. But here's the twist, I smiled, reaching into my bag. I never drank the coffee. I poured it out the second she turned her back. Sophie's face went pale. She looked under the table and sure enough, there it was. A balled-up napkin stained with dumped coffee. She shrieked and lunged at me. But 2 police officers stepped in just in time, restraining her as she thrashed and screamed. We received a report of an attempted poisoning, one officer said firmly. We'll need both of you to come with us for questioning. I watched, calm and cold, as they cuffed both John and Sophie. John twisted around to yell at me, I'm the father of your child. You really want our baby to grow up without a dad? I placed a gentle hand on my stomach and smiled sweetly. You really think this was about a baby? I'm not pregnant. He froze. I kept going, softly, steadily. I haven't had a period in months, true, but it's just stress-induced hormone imbalance. And even if I was pregnant, it wouldn't be yours. His mouth opened but nothing came out. Later, I submitted every shred of evidence I'd collected to the police. Sophie's DMs inciting others to harm me, the screenshots from her anonymous chat group, even the voice recording from the cafe. Law enforcement took it seriously. Very seriously. The investigation moved fast. A week later, I was notified that the case had progressed. Charges were being filed. And surprisingly, John pled guilty to everything. Said it was all his idea. Claimed Sophie was just a child manipulated by her father. Sophie at first remained silent. Then, teary-eyed, she nodded along to his confession. I thought that would be the end of it. Until I received an email. Attached was a copy of John's recent medical exam. I opened it, and then I laughed. Out loud. In the quiet of my kitchen, I laughed like I hadn't in years. I booked a visitation at the detention center the next morning. When I walked into the glass-walled booth, I barely recognized him. John looked 20 years older, Hair gray, skin sallow, spirit drained. He gritted his teeth when he saw me. You here to gloat? I slid the paper up against the glass. Just wanted to share 2 little updates, I said lightly. One good, one not so good. He read the first few lines. And then his eyes widened. His mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish. Good news, I said. You don't have cancer. You're surprisingly healthy for your age. Bad news. I leaned forward slightly. Your sperm count is effectively 0. Medically speaking, you've never been capable of fathering a child. His face collapsed. I watched the cracks spread across his carefully constructed denial. I also took the liberty, I added, of ordering a paternity test. And guess what? I slid a second piece of paper against the glass. No biological relation. That's right. Sophie isn't your daughter. Never was. You've been wearing that crown of delusion for nearly 2 decades. Must feel tight. He stared at the report, shaking. No, that's not possible. He's my daughter. This report is fake. You forged it. I shrugged. Tell yourself whatever you need to. Just ask yourself, was it worth it? You pled guilty. Took the fall. For a girl who's not even yours. I hear you'll be inside for about 5 years. When you get out, let's see who's still willing to hire a felon with a fraud record. And just so we're clear, my company won't be. As I turned to leave, I heard him behind me, howling, screaming, pounding the glass like an animal in a cage. But I didn't turn back. I stepped into the sun and let it warm my skin. That was the first day of the rest of my life. And I didn't owe anyone a damn thing. Just a few days later, word got out. John was trying to recant his confession, to save his own skin. In the end, he got a slap on the wrist. 3 months behind bars. Sophie, on the other hand, wasn't nearly as lucky. For her attempt to drug my drink, the court sentenced her to 4 years in prison for attempted poisoning. When I heard the verdict, I let out a cold laugh. How fitting. She had been planning to start college, and now? She still got herself a place in a highly structured institution. Just not the kind with dorm parties and campus tours. 4 years of early wake-ups, strict routines, and mandatory introspection. A different kind of higher education. I heard that when she found out John had thrown her under the bus, she completely lost control. Screamed. Fought. Even assaulted a corrections officer. They threw her in solitary and revoked her visitation rights. Only then did she finally quiet down. John was released on a Tuesday. Still delusional, he thought we might talk things through. I didn't bother with niceties. I called the police. The squad car hadn't even arrived yet, but he must have seen it coming. He fled down the street like a stray dog with its tail between its legs. A week later, he asked to meet me at the courthouse to finalize our divorce. That day, I received the judge's ruling in the mail. Just one thin sheet of paper, signed and sealed. But holding it felt like a boulder being lifted off my chest. I stepped outside. The sun was warm. The wind no longer sharp. For one beautiful moment I felt it, like I had finally climbed out of the muck, barefoot and scraped but breathing free. I stood at the top of the courthouse steps and exhaled, long and deep. It was over. And yes, the road ahead would be mine alone. But so what? I could walk it just fine. Hell, I could run it. Even without anyone beside me, I'd live boldly. Brightly. Just like the wildflowers that bloom in spring. Loud, unapologetic, and gloriously alive.